be an explosion.
Good afternoon, listeners. We've got an amazing episode lined up for you today. I'm your host, Yawer, on the Cambrian Explosion podcast with my co hosts, Nabil and Mahwish. How are you guys doing today?
Yeah,
Uh,
awesome.
awesome. Still there and kicking and living the human life. We haven't been replaced by AIs yet. So we're going to do our exciting episode about, drumroll please, the Toronto Public Library cyber attack and the rise of the ransomware industry. Uh, so this is going to be interesting, but let's do a little segue first. Nabil, you told me recently that you lost your wallet and you lost your library card as well. So what happened there?
Yeah, that's a funny little incident because I lost my wallet. I had to get all my cards renewed, including my credit card. I had a $300 charge, identity theft charge on there. So that I
That's rough.
somebody had used my credit card for $300, and thankfully the bank issued that back to me as a fraud claim. But I also had to get my library card renewed, because I had lost my card. So I wanted a new one. And when I went there, the library just could not do it because I'd just been hit by the
Cyber attack.
yeah, the cyber attack. But I'm happy. I still don't have a library card, but at least I didn't home, right? Because Mavish was telling me about that, about identity theft and what can happen with people when that happens.
Yeah, so last year there was a story about a couple that they went on a business trip. I think this was in 2022. They went on a business trip. They were out of the country for several months, and someone impersonated them, listed their house, got a real estate lawyer involved, I guess, and sold the house. And someone had moved in, taken possession. God knows what happened to the items that they had in that house, but someone had moved in and taken over. And then the people who were on the business trip came back and found that their house was, inhabited by someone else. Thank goodness it was an AI. But in any case, that at least it was only your wallet, because losing your house is a big thing, and we still really don't know what happened to them, and I'm still wondering if they got their house back. But it really makes you wonder about ransomware and just all this stuff that can happen when someone does that to you. But going back to the Toronto Public Library, that's an even bigger thing, because it's sort of affecting so many more people because they've lost their personal information. So it can be a very scary time. So let's get into it and talk about what that means.
Yeah, good news and bad news. First of all, Nabil, it looks like your personal information would probably not have been stolen by that particular attack. I don't know about other attacks, but the Toronto Public Library attack, they put out a press release saying that unfortunately, but only current and former Toronto Public Library employee data was stolen. So what happened there is that they had all this data sitting in files on a network drive, an internal network drive, which normally people are not, obviously from the outside world, you cannot access the network drive, but somehow these hackers got into it and they launched a ransomware attack against the TPL. TPL refused to pay, and the hackers, carried out that threat and stole all that employee personal data. And EPL's computer systems IT systems had to be shut down, which is of course why they couldn't replace your card. And I believe to this day, DPL systems are on kind of like a hiatus, and they are promising that they'll be back whenever they can, but it looks like they still haven't cleaned up the whole system yet.
It's really interesting that you're mentioning it's the Toronto Library. That's the last place I would think that I would have to worry about my information, because usually it's my bank or something else, the more confidential, that I would worry about. But losing it at such a simple place like the library is
Yeah, who
really
doesn't love libraries, right? Everybody loves libraries. Who would want to attack libraries? It's weird, right? But apparently, this is not like an isolated incident. So the TPL attack happened on October 28th of last year, but apparently so did another library ransomware attack. The British Library, obviously in London, England, was also hit by a ransomware attack, incidentally last October as well. For all we know, it could be the same group of hackers doing both attacks. And in the case of the British Library, they they are still impacted months later, just like the DPL. Their online catalog is offline. They still haven't restored services. You know what's going on here, right? Like these ransomware attacks seem to be stepping up, and in fact, it is a booming industry. You know, if you compare to a decade ago, ransomware was barely heard of. Nowadays, it seems to be like a common occurrence, almost everyday occurrence.
I'm curious whether this was a ransomware attack that was precipitated by a technical piece or a social engineering piece. Growing up, I read about Kevin Mitnick, one of the pro OG hackers, and I read his biography, and a large part of his skill was social engineering. He would just call people up and get information by um, acting like some other employee or some important government official, and just talking his way through there, or even sometimes being very nice to ladies and talking his way through being very nice to ladies, um, and get the information. And then at the same time, it was also a technical acumen that he had, and it's the combination of both that he was able to use, because he knew what information to get to and how to test the systems. And I'm curious whether this was both of these attacks were where which side they were coming from. Were they social engineering? Were they technical hacks? Maybe we don't know. Maybe no information has been.
You're saying he's the father of ransomware. Basically, he started everything.
Well, in a way, he was so good at it that when they caught him, they put him in jail, and then they started hiring him to design systems for protection against similar attacks. So he's in a way, I don't know his total contributions to this, but he has been made significant contributions to government systems and banking systems, protections around. Have you seen the movie Catch Me If You Can?
I haven't, but obviously I've heard a lot about it.
Yeah, no, I've seen it. It's actually a very good movie.
It's about a mixture of pre-internet days hacking and social engineering, and it's very interesting movie. Leonardo DiCaprio. He impersonates being quite a few different professions, and makes checks, particularly with the airline industry, where he will create checks and cash them in a completely different place, knowing that in the industry at that time information traveled slower, and so he would get away with a lot of money that way.
That actually reminds me of this very simple but effective attack. People literally just send invoices. They make up invoices and send them to big companies. Now, these big companies, they get these invoices and they think, oh, here's an invoice. I have to pay this off. And they just pay the invoices. And the invoice is for literally nothing, right? It's a fraudulent invoice. But, people were actually paying them. In fact, so much so that nowadays, any companies which if you're a vendor to one of these companies, they make you jump through all of these hoops nowadays. They have their own digital invoicing system, and you have to sign up in that system, and you have to send an invoice through there, and you can only sign up if you have, obviously, you were given the invitation to sign up and stuff like that. So now, for security reasons, companies have locked down and clamped down on these kinds of practices, because there's so much scamming and frauds out there nowadays. Just like it's a totally unbelievable level nowadays.
Mavish, I want to check in with you on this. There's identity theft around jobs, etc., that also happens. Have you had any experiences within the HR frame of coming across?
Yes, actually, I work in HR and just getting people hired. And we had an individual who was contacted by somebody about a job, and they asked for money. I think but it was over $500, and it was something along the lines of, we need this for office equipment. If you pay us right now, we get it to you and then pay you back, and it'll be on your first paycheck. And then within a day, this person who's desperate for a job didn't really want to check in with anybody because he just wanted to get the job and move forward, lost that money. And it's actually happened quite a bit. There was another person previously who actually gave their SIN number to a company that wasn't verified. But these days, LinkedIn has like a verified member button that you can check. So everybody should be checking if, for example, it's job related, whether they're verified on LinkedIn, when did they go on LinkedIn, how long have they been a member there. You can even go onto the LinkedIn company pages to check if that person actually works there. However, fraudsters are becoming very smart. They will even get a copy of the signature of the person and send it. Every time, I've had several jobs in the last year. Every time I start a new job, I will get an email from the CEO of the company stating, and I don't know if you guys have had this either, but in my spam, it'll be there. Oh, hey, Mavish, I need you for something really urgently. Can you respond to this email? And I'll get it not only on my personal email, but somehow this fraudster has gotten my company email too. And so I'll get this both. And I remember once I woke up one morning checking my email, and I thought it was a dream because I couldn't find that email after. And I was like, oh no, my boss needs something from me. But it was actually a fraudster. And it was very crazy. So yeah, tons going on in the HR side.
Yeah, we have quite a deep spam checking training that at least in my previous 3, 4, 5 jobs that I've had, they've made us go through this because oftentimes that's the entry point. Grab one person, be able to either on a social level socially hack them or technically hack them with an spam email like this, and that's your entry in there. And once you're in there, I mean, yeah, where you were talking about that cat and mouse game that governments and companies and hackers are playing. So tell me more about that. That sounded very interesting.
Right. So yeah. So the news here is that compared to a few years ago, the ransomware malware industry has really taken off. Like there's like it's an order of magnitude more money flowing into those through those attacks. For example, I'll quote an Economist article which talks about this. Chainalysis, a data company, estimates that ransom payments between January and June 2023, that's first half of last year, added up to $449 million compared to about $559 million for the entirety of 2022. So 2 years ago, um, that's more than doubling, and the pace seems to be accelerating. So why is this happening? Well, to me, the key enabling factor is the existence of crypto. Before crypto, it's just not economical to carry out ransomware attacks because how are you going to get the payment, right? People would ask, the ransomware attackers would ask the victims to buy, like, I don't know, gift cards, and send them and ship them the gift cards, right? It's really inefficient way of doing it. But now with crypto, all you have to do is say, send this much money to my Bitcoin wallet, and I'll give you a wallet address. This is the address. Just send the money there, and then they move the cryptos through a bunch of untraceable routes so that the money can never be recovered again, or it can never be traced, who owns those wallets. So the rise of crypto, and especially it seems to be that, based on this article, there are large groups of ransomware uh, attackers who band together into these kind of like entities, and they carry out these attacks. Many of them seem to be in Eastern Europe, even to the extent that when the Russia-Ukraine war started in 2022, there was a significant downward trend in the attacks, the ransomware attacks. Why? Because the Russian and Ukrainian people who make up these groups, they were like arguing with each other, like they fell out with each other because of the war. So the attacks that they together used to carry out naturally decreased, when the war started. But then over time, the attacks have resumed back to their normal levels.
Well, it's interesting you say that because just recently there've been like Russian hackers that were hacking into Ukrainian infrastructure for like cameras and stuff because
Mm,
to get some video footage of the missile attacks that were happening.
mhm,
That happened. It's also interesting you say that because I do want to give a shout out to CoffeeZilla. It's a YouTuber that I follow,
mhm.
and he's outed a bunch of scammers by talking about what their scams look like and how they're doing them. And a lot of it has just got to do with crypto. It's crypto has made it, and NFTs have made it so easy to scam people
Yeah.
directly. And the catch of it is untraceability of funds, how and the convenience of doing crypto is what's helping all of this happen. It's become a really unregulated space in effect, and my hope is that we just had the FTX incident happen, with Sam going to jail for it.
Sam Bankman-Fried, yeah.
Yeah. And so my hope is that that's not the end of it, and there's actual regulation that comes out of this because
Right.
that's a wild west kind of space, the crypto space.
Yeah, I mean, at its core, you can prosecute and regulate the companies, but at its core, crypto is a peer-to-peer network. So you can never regulate the core protocols of crypto that run independently of any companies or systems. So I don't know what's going to happen in the future because it looks like crypto is set to grow as an instrument of criminal money laundering and financing, and there seems to be no stopping it. So I wonder, I mean, there's going to be probably new strategies needed to combat this.
So
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say the way that people should think about it is, I've seen a lot of, I'm sure both of you have gotten text messages, oh, your account has been compromised, click this link. The government of Canada has seen that this has happened. You are supposed to be going to court. Please give us a call back, or click this link to go to the CRA website, right? So I think
Mm,
it's growing a lot more, and it's interesting because every time I travel, I get less of these texts. The moment I come back, I get 2 texts a day just
mm,
trying to get me that. So I think it's really going because now you're having all these ransomware individuals who are quick enough to just get that money from you with those links. But it brings a question to mind is what can people do to protect themselves against ransomware? What are some simple strategies that we could do every day to just make sure that we
Right.
don't get caught up in some of these things, other than not dropping your wallet and losing everything, you know?
Yeah, on a personal note, how can you protect yourself at a personal level, obviously? You know, Mavish, you mentioned that you use password managers, right? Obviously, that's a really good idea.
Yeah, I use LastPass
Mhm,
specifically, but you know what I do with my
mhm,
passwords is I don't trust anything online, so I
mhm.
encrypt my passwords too. So it's like I'm the only one when I see the password, I know what my password is. I don't save my banking information on them. It's just more
Right.
for me to have a reminder what my password is, so I don't forget it.
Yeah, I use a password manager as well, have for a long time. Obviously the trick here is to be very careful about setting up all of these things, right? Like you have to pick really strong, very strong random passwords. You have to pick really strong and random security answers and questions. You know how people always complain that, my security questions are like, what was the name of your first dog? Or what's your mother's maiden name? And and anybody can hack into my account just by guessing these or knowing these facts about me. Well, the trick here is that you don't actually answer with the actual names, right? You make up random things and put them as answers for those security answers. So obviously, password managers, strong passwords, use multi-factor authentication with an authenticator app like Google or whatever you prefer. So there are plenty of ways to kind of make it much harder and less economical for people to attack you. Of course, there's phishing attacks, fraud, all sorts of attacks. People will send you emails hoping to get you to click on something. In a web browser, often when you click on something, that's where the danger happens. When you click inside a web page, you don't know what's going to happen because there could be all kinds of scripts running there. You could be redirected to a fake page that looks like a real page, and you could enter your information. You should always carefully check the domain name and the certificate and the trust levels and stuff like that. Browsers have gotten better at protecting us from those kinds of things, but they can't be 100%, right? So you have to be careful.
My little tip or trick on this is to have separate email addresses for communication and for having my financials, like critical financials, and then also not just separate email accounts, even with the password manager, separate passwords for financial information as well as my communication based tools. Just separating those two out means that most people, when they try to phish me, they're trying to phish my communication emails, and even if they get those, they're just getting hold of my communication, not my financial information. That's completely a separate ball game trying to get that. So
Yeah, and on a similar note, another recommendation specifically for Canada, where we have the Interact system, where you can send money from one person to another, when you both have bank accounts, obviously, is that when you send when you send somebody an Interact payment via their mobile phone or email address, they're sent a confirmation message and asked to answer the security question and stuff like that, which is actually a vector of attack which can and has gotten hacked, and the money can get stolen that way. So one recommendation for Interac is to always send to set up auto deposit on your Interac. So when you receive money, it will automatically be deposited into your account without any further actions required.
very
Okay.
interesting.
Yeah, I always found the tap function on our credit cards in Canada a little, so in this case, for example, Nabil, as our
Mhm.
use case for this podcast, you lost your wallet, someone doesn't really need your pin code. They can keep purchasing things, $100, $150, and it will go through, right? Just by a simple tap. I used to work in credit cards in the beginning of my career, and that was a big problem. If someone took your credit card and they just kept tapping, people didn't even know that you can call in and set a limit on that or disable it if you wanted to. So, and this is 10 years ago.
That's actually worth talking through. So one, disable your tap on your debit card, because when it's taken out of your debit card, it's taken from your account. It's not taken from the credit account. If it's taken from the credit account, then there's an insurance on it. So you can do a fraud claim on it. So number one, disable your debit card. Number two, there are two types of limits. There's a daily limit and there's a tap limit. So there's a daily limit of, let's say, $500 or $300. You can't spend more than that on the credit card. And then there's a tap limit of $100. You can't spend more than $100 in one tap. So those kind of limits can also be set. So set those according to your choices or preferences, whatever amounts you're comfortable with. But I think that that's an important thing to do. And I had those limits set, which means I only got, although they could have tapped over a certain amount, they only tapped about $300 on it because they couldn't tap out more.
Yeah, and it's important to note some banks have it over 100. You can still tap over $100 on your card, because I noticed that with some of my and that's another tip is I bank with two different banks, because if something happens to one of my banks, I have another bank account to fall back on. But I noticed in the different credit cards I had in those banks, it was not, it's over $100. You can still tap, especially when I'm doing groceries. So that is something to note of, and something for me also to learn in here, to go back to my bank and make sure that that limit is set. But yeah, you need to know how much your bank has increased that limit to, because it could be $300 and then your credit card is stolen. You're still have somebody who's tapping, and you're in big trouble then.
So question for you guys then. What would you do if you were hit by a ransomware attack? Would you pay the ransom, or would you risk not paying it and getting your data stolen?
It depends question, right? What type of information are they ransoming?
Yeah.
If they are looking at my set of compositions that I have made and stored on my computer for music, absolutely I'm paying for that. If it's my office stuff, I don't care.
Yeah. The insurance will cover it.
I have my priorities wrong, I know, but that's how it works.
Well, there's just as there is a kind of like a budding cyber criminal industry driven by crypto financing, there's also like there's kind of like a cat and mouse game going on with the response to these attackers, where actually governments are employing nowadays large legions of cyber IT people or hackers, to their own government hackers, to attack the attackers, right? Because that seems to be the only viable or best strategy to shut them down. And they've actually had some notable successes recently. But the problem with this strategy is that it's very expensive and it takes time to successfully attack and shut down these other criminals, these malware, ransomware criminals. So, I mean, the takeaway for me from all this is that, yeah, this is a booming industry, and we need better security protocols to kind of, in the future going forward, we need to get really, really much better at security than we are now. And the way things are going, uh, you know, eh, people are trying to solve this from various angles, but I think it's going to be kind of like a combination of different tactics.
Yeah, and I just want to come in and say, Yawer, I'm glad you think we're important enough that we would get ransom attacked.
Yeah, you guys are, of course, Cambrian explosion. So, who knows? We might get hit one day for demands because of demands of our amazing episodes. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Explosive updates on our personal site for doing this podcast.
Yeah. We have some explosive news. Yeah. So
Actually want to mention that we should do an episode in the future, not the next one, but in the future, just going into the tactics that governments have been using, because there was the deep web. What was that website called? Silk Road.
yeah, Silk Road. Yeah.
That's very interesting, and how that was done. That's an interesting story. There's the what the FBI did, FBI or Interpol did with the app that they created, where they were able to capture criminals using that secure app. Criminals thought was secure, but was actually run by the police agency. So there's an interesting story there to maybe cover in the future of how the governments are actually combating, not just
Sure.
one side.
Yeah, for sure. And as always, we've come to the end of our podcast. We're going to ask everybody to please give us a like, follow, or subscribe wherever you're listening to us from. Just give us your feedback. We'd love to know what different topics you'd like to speak about, and what we can give you more explosive remarks on. If you haven't already, please check out our previous podcast, in which we talked about whether AI will be taking your job in 2024. And we had a lot of fun with that, and it's kind of carried on in this podcast as well. I think we touched upon some topics there too. We are going to leave the next topic up in the air. We're going to be deciding that amongst ourselves, but it's going to be awesome. And until next time, we hope you have a great week ahead. And it was fun talking about ways I'm going to have to look into making sure I'm secure moving forward.
Right. Thanks everyone for listening. This is Cambrian Explosion signing off, and see you next time.
Cheers.
Cheers. See you next time.